I can guarantee that the end of this video is going to shock you. There was a young girl who had trouble making friends because her mom wouldn't let her play with the other kids in the neighborhood. One day, the mom left to go to the store, so she snuck outside of the house. She grabbed her teddy bear and went outside, but still, none of the kids wanted to play with her. Eventually, a strange-looking boy approached her and said that he wanted to be her friend. The little girl was thrilled to finally have a friend her age, and he eventually asked if she wanted to come to his house to play. When they arrived, the little girl was confused, because the house appeared to be abandoned like no one had been in there for years. They walked into his garden and immediately the girl threw up. She asked him for some water and he just smiled at her creepily and said, "You're going to sleep here sometime soon." Weeks later, the girl went looking for him and he was nowhere to be found. Soon, a paper airplane flew to her and it was a newspaper clipping. She opened it up to find that the boy she'd been playing with went missing 9 years ago.
This is one of the strangest unsolved mysteries of all time. In 1952, 9 Russian hikers who were all super experienced set off into the Ural Mountains. However, the path that they chose to take on the hike was pretty hard, even for hikers as experienced as them. And to make things worse, they ran into a severe snowstorm that night. So all 9 of the hikers decided to set up their tents and try and wait out the storm. However, at some point during that night, the hikers cut open their tents from the inside and set off into the snowstorm. All 9 of them began to head towards some trees that were nearby their campsite. And this is where the story gets really creepy. A few days later, 3 of the 9 campers were found dead in the trees. And at the base of these trees, there were a bunch of claw marks and scratches on the trunks. And the 6 other hikers were also all found dead scattered around the area. And upon testing them, their skin and clothes appeared to be radioactive.
Remember this man who claimed to be Diddy's sex slave and no one believed him?
I had sex with Cassie and Sean. Basically, he would tell me what to do with Cassie. I had like 15 encounters and I heard lots of business. Because what they would do is Sean talks a lot on the phone and on the TV with people and stuff, and I was like a sex slave, okay?
His name's Jonathan Audie, and allegedly he signed an NDA in exchange for $5 million in 2014. Now, how do we know this? This photo of this NDA was made public recently, and it has Sean Combs and Jonathan Audie's signature. So Jonathan was a well-known entertainer and later became a porn star, and he met Diddy sometime around 2014 at a party at the ultra-exclusive Star Island in Miami Beach. Jonathan had some crazy claims, but he said that he was forced to sleep with Cassie and others while Diddy watched and filmed. And to further corroborate this claim, at the time, Jonathan was married to a woman named Tanya Troutwine, who actually came forward the other day and confirmed that not long after Jonathan met Diddy, he asked her for a divorce. Tanya said that Jonathan was extremely pushy to finalize the divorce, and not even a month later after meeting Diddy, he purchased 5 properties mortgage-free, yet he only made $2,000 a month. So where did he get all this sudden cash? So that's definitely something to question, and now with Diddy's trial coming up, I'm genuinely curious to see if Jonathan would be testifying against him.
Only 3% of people can do this. You need to put your hand flat on the wall and bend your pinky finger back without moving any of your other fingers. So the real question is, are you in this 3%?
Strangest Unsolved Mysteries in Every U.S. State. Part 23, Colorado. In 1990, a man named Steve Lee moved his family into his dream house in Colorado Springs, Colorado. The house was in the middle of nowhere and was surrounded by a dark, dense forest. Just a week after they moved in, Steve and his family began to see strange, shadowy figures moving along the walls of the house at night. They began to hear quiet whispers, footsteps, and rattling chains all around their home. Even crazier, the family's electronics and lights began to flicker on and off randomly. Steve was afraid that people were breaking into his home at night, so he bought motion detectors and placed them all around his house. However, the motion detectors began detecting motion literally everywhere, even when there clearly wasn't anyone there. Steve thought the motion detectors were malfunctioning, so he placed cameras all around the house instead. They began to capture strange orbs of light floating around the house at night, and even ghost faces on walls and windows. Somehow, the family still lives in that same exact house to this very day, and they still experience the same strange occurrences every single night.
Here's the truth behind Winnie the Pooh. All of the characters in Winnie the Pooh represent a different mental disorder. Winnie represents an eating disorder, which is why he eats so much honey. Eeyore represents depression, which is why he's sad all the time. Tigger represents ADHD, it's the reason why he can never stay still. Christopher Robin represents schizophrenia because all of the animals in the show are actually just in his head. Piglet represents anxiety, this is why she is always nervous. The rabbit represents OCD because he is obsessed with order. The owl represents narcissism, this is the reason why he thinks he is wiser than everybody else. And Rue represents autism, this is why she is always confused.
On Wednesday morning at 2:17 a.m., 17 children from the same classroom at Maybrook Elementary School went missing at the same time. They got out of their beds, opened their front door, and ran out. Their parents were convinced that their teacher was involved in their disappearance. But after paying close attention to their Ring cameras, they realized something more sinister was going on. But if you want to know what happens next, you need to go watch the movie Weapons. I went to the screening, and hands down, it's one of the best horror movies I've seen this year. Weapons has such an interesting storyline, and I usually don't get scared from horror movies, but this time was different. Not to mention, it's starring Julia Gardner, which made me so much more eager to go watch it. Also, Warner Bros. Really went all out because we were taken on a whole field trip right before we watched the movie, and we were kind of scared because we didn't know what to expect. Like, where was the school bus taking us? This entire experience really hyped up the movie for us, and it did not disappoint. Weapons is finally out in theaters today, and if you go and watch it, let me know.
These people were literally just sat on a Zoom call until everyone they knew started dying. Ever seen a horror movie that just makes you feel sick, that you can't stop thinking about it for days? Well, these are the ones you need to see in under 60 seconds, and no spoilers. You've probably no doubt seen scenes from The Grudge. Pretty terrifying film, but nothing compared to Ju-on The Grudge. This is the original, and it is absolutely horrifying. Same as in the popular remake, this woman goes and stays at a house, and then, well, there's a spirit that inhabits this house, and horrendous stuff starts happening. But it follows more on the side of this boy who, like, meows. A group of friends decide to go on a caving expedition. Doesn't sound like a great idea. They go right down and descend into these caves where no one has been before, but wait, there's definitely people in there. This has probably the biggest jump scare I've ever seen in my life, well, multiple of them, and is just genuinely horrifying. Wait till they pull out the camcorder. This film was filmed completely on a Zoom call, which is crazy. Essentially, this group of friends get together one evening on a Zoom call in lockdown to basically speak to this psychic woman, and they're trying to contact people in the afterlife and prove to each other that paranormal life does exist. And, well, it definitely does, and yeah, what happens next is crazy. The ending of this film, I don't think I've ever jumped so much in my life.
This boy survived one of the most brutal cartel attacks ever. It was a normal morning on November 4th, 2019 when 3 SUVs carrying mothers and children from a quiet Mormon community in Mexico unknowingly drove straight into cartel territory. Then, without warning, hell broke loose. Bullets began raining down from the hills. High-caliber rounds tore through metal and flesh as the convoy was ambushed by cartel gunmen, likely mistaking them for rivals. One vehicle was lit on fire with 5 family members still trapped inside, the air filled with screams, smoke, and the stench of burning bodies. In one of the SUVs, 13-year-old Devin Langford sat frozen as his mother was shot dead beside him. His younger brothers took bullets, blood pooled around his feet, but Devin didn't break. With ears ringing and his body trembling, he pulled 6 surviving siblings from the wreckage. Some were injured and one had a bullet in the chest. Devin dragged them into the brush, covering them with branches and whispering to them not to cry. Terrified the cartel members would come back to finish the job. Then he made an unthinkable choice. Alone and without food or shoes, he walked nearly 14 miles through cartel-infested desert. He did this to go get help, and hours later, rescuers found his 9-year-old sister barefoot and bleeding, still trying to save the others. Devin's heroic actions saved the lives of all of his siblings.
He co-founded a MAGA-themed fast food chain. Now he's facing deportation. Lebanese immigrant Roland Bainey has built 4 locations of Trump Burger in Texas. The restaurant serves everything from the Trump Tower Burger to the Melania Crispy Chicken, complete with Trump family impersonators. But Bainey is now under federal investigation after being accused of immigration fraud. Homeland Security says he faked a sham marriage to get his green card. Immigration officials reportedly found no lease, no shared accounts, no proof the couple ever lived together, and have already notified him that his green card is being revoked. He's due in immigration court in November, where he could be formally ordered to leave the country.
Let's talk about a fishing horror game where you have to pay off a debt you owe to a shark, but there's something else under the water with you. Yes, this is a fishing horror game, and it's called Lone Shark. Full playthrough of the entire game on my channel. The story here is actually really good. We're on a ship called the Vita Nova, and we owe 100,000 euros to a shark. That loan was how we got the boat in the first place, and now we have to get all of that debt by tonight. So we fish and fish and fish. But the problem is the fish we're catching are barely worth anything. The night ends in an hour. There's no way we can get the money in time. But everything changes when we catch the talking fish Cagliuso. This guy gives us one of his special eyes to use as a lure. And with that lure, we catch golden fish. And they are worth a ton of money. As we fish, we keep hearing strange things under the water. And Cagliuso keeps referring to an associate he knows. There's something else going on here. Are we being tricked? I won't spoil the story after that point. You can check out my playthrough if you want. But this game really is a terrifying depiction of how debt can spiral out of control. This girl was held captive by her family for 25 years. Blanche Monnier came from an esteemed family and seemed destined for a life of privilege. But when she fell in love with a man her family deemed unsuitable, a modest lawyer, her mother reacted with fury. Determined to stop the relationship, she took an unthinkable step to ensure Blanche would never marry. Blanche vanished without a trace, and for 25 long years, her fate remained a mystery. In truth, she had been secretly imprisoned by her own family in a small dark room of their home. With the shutters nailed shut and no access to sunlight or fresh air, Blanche was left in squalor, her basic needs ignored. She lived in silence and filth, confined to the same bed day and night while the family lied to the outside world, claiming she had moved abroad and entered a coven. Friends and society had no reason to suspect anything more sinister. However, it wasn't until May 23, 1901, when an anonymous letter reached the authorities in Paris, that the horrifying secret was finally exposed. Police raided the home and discovered Blanche, now a skeletal, broken woman, lying in darkness, her condition appalling. Blanche weighed only 55 pounds when she was found. Her mother was immediately arrested and the case sent shockwaves through France.
When I tell you this is the worst mechanophobia thing I've ever seen in my entire life, I'm not joking. This is actually the worst thing I've ever seen, and it is a massive, life-sized orca with a seal in its mouth that is completely submerged, and it comes out of the water on a dark ride, and it goes all the way back down, completely submerged again. And if you know me, you know I have a massive phobia of orcas, and I've shown this in a video in the past, and I just needed to re-traumatize y'all and make y'all understand that this is the scariest thing in the entire world to me. It is in Australia at the Kelly Tarletons, and guess what? It's abandoned now. Yeah, and it is still visible through a hole in the wall where it was abandoned in 2012. And here is a photo of it visible through the wall with all the dust on it, and oh my god, this photo is actually the worst thing and has bammed all of my boozles, and I have difficulty even looking at it. Call me a snowflake all you want, I don't care. This is the scariest thing in the entire world to me with my huge orca phobia, and I just can't handle this. No. Watch this video and let me know what you're thinking, and would you ever go on this ride back when it was operational? Oh my god.
I think there's enough people talking about the woman in Florida who was posing as a nurse for 2 years, and she serviced 4,500 patients. Granted, she's been arrested, but I was thinking to myself, how is this even possible? Like, surely there's some verification system when hiring a medical professional, right? From what I understood, she took her nursing exam, did not pass, so then when it came time for her to apply and she had to provide like a nursing number, something to prove that she was an actual nurse, she provided one for a different woman, a nurse who had her first name but not her last name. She's been arrested. She's gonna face something like 14 different felony charges for this, but I'm also questioning, I'm like, she is definitely at fault for lying, but is the hospital also not at fault? The nurses and attorneys, please weigh in on this one. I'm very confused. So Sydney Sweeney is allegedly costing American Eagle a lot of money. And this came from the blinds of apparently what American Eagle execs are saying behind closed doors, so I'm gonna get into it. Everybody's well aware of the American Eagle campaign that Sydney Sweeney did that was not well received. A lot of people criticizing it, including some celebrities, of saying that it had this bizarre subtext and undertone of genetic supremacy. And I do want to hear where you stand on this, but I'm more curious to hear about how you feel about the blind item. So the story that's allegedly getting buried here from all the bad press is that her endorsement did absolutely nothing for sales or even traffic or clicks to the website. Apparently execs are fuming because they assumed that her name and endorsement would equate to influence for the brand. Rumor has it American Eagle may have paid her upwards of 7 figures for the campaign.
Here are some photos taken right before disaster, part 3. Here is the last photo ever taken of Paul Walker. It shows him climbing into the car that eventually crashed, taking him and the driver's lives back in 2013. Craziest part is, Paul Walker wasn't even the one driving. The guy driving was a professional race car driver. And the saddest part is that all this happened at a charity event that Paul Walker was hosting. RIP. This photo was taken right before the Homage bombing. The red car in this photograph right here contained a bomb that killed 29 people and injured some 220 others. Surprisingly, the man and child both survived, but the photographer didn't. This unsuspecting family snapped the last moments of Ayano's life. The 20-year-old student in the red threw herself over the railings outside of the Niagara Falls to her death. That's super sad. Pretty cool!
Have you ever heard about the urban legend of the Japanese kappa? We're going to be talking about it today, and here is an animatronic of one in water. So the Japanese kappa is a water monster that has like a little bump on its head, which we'll get to that in a moment. But this thing that looks like an egg, you know what that is? That is your soul that it sucks out through your butt. Yeah, these Japanese water demons, they will suck your soul out of your butt, which is super interesting and also terrifying. This is one in a little tank, and that is super creepy, by the way. The little bump on the top of his head has to be kept wet at all times, otherwise the kappa can apparently like cease to exist. So interesting. I was born with something called aplasia cutis. I don't know if you can tell, but I have a bump on the top of my head. It looks just like the Japanese kappa. And I sent it to my mom one time and I was like, bro, I just realized with my bald spot, I look like a Japanese kappa. Google it. And she said, you do resemble him. Thanks, Mom. Here's another depiction of one, and apparently in Japan, you know how like sometimes parents will like scare their kids about like the boogeyman or like tell like tall tales and things like that. In Japan, in order to keep their children from drowning and like keeping them near like large bodies of water, they will be like, do not go near that. There's a kappa in there. They don't say Japanese kappa, but they're like, there's a kappa in there and it'll get you. And then so the kids don't go near there so that they don't drown. Super interesting. I always love hearing about stuff like that. But yeah, like culturally, apparently they like to mess with kids. Here's one in a human in like a kappa suit, like traumatizing little children. And that's horrible. But yeah, there's a whole bunch of like sub-mechanophobia of the Japanese kappa in Japan. And watch this video and let me know what you're thinking. And I do not like this. Here's one of the animatronics with the person so you can see just how big it is in that water.
Here are some unexplainable photos, part 2. In August of the year 1997, members of the Russell family visited their grandmother in the home where she was living. They were later surprised to discover that in the background of this photo they took of her, their grandfather appeared behind her, but he had died 3 years earlier. Nicknamed the Black Knight, this mysterious space-like object right here has been spotted following an unusual polar orbit. When the drama of John F. Kennedy's assassination unfolded in Dallas, November 22nd, 1963, this unknown woman right here was there and filmed the whole thing. But the FBI was never able to locate her. Why was she recording everything and where did she go? This photo shows British war workers escape to the seaside. This photo was taken in September 1943. But in the middle of the photo right here, this guy looks like he's on a cell phone. Pretty cool.
Most dangerous countries in the world. Syria. Crime Index 69.1. Trinidad and Tobago. Crime Index 70.8. Honduras. Crime Index 72.7. South Africa. Crime Index 74.8. Afghanistan. Crime Index 75.7. Haiti. Crime Index 78.7.
3 signs that you might be a genius. 1. You're sarcastic. People that are sarcastic are usually clever and quick-witted. This is because being sarcastic requires you to think on your feet. Number 2, staying up late. If this is you at 3 AM, there's a high chance that you're smarter than the average person. So the next time you're tired in class, just show this video to your teacher. And finally, at number 3, you have messy handwriting. Studies have proven that people have messy handwriting because their brains work faster than their hands. Now everyone take a minute to tag someone or share this with someone that needs to hear it.
There's this fake nurse in Florida that treated 4,400 patients without a license at all. Here she is getting arrested in the car. She got arrested on Tuesday. This went on from July of 2023 up until literally Tuesday. How did she get away with posing as a registered nurse? Let's talk about how this happened. So she was working as an advanced nursing assistant, right? So she was working under the supervision of an RN. Eventually, she would go on to lie to the hospital saying, she was about to take her board exam. She hadn't passed it yet, but she was, right around the corner about to take it. She gave them a licensing number that led to her first name, but not her last name. So she made up the story that she recently got married. That's why it didn't change yet. They requested the marriage record. She never provided it. She got the promotion anyways, and that's how she treated patients for 2 years. Now, this is a complete disregard of credentials by the hospital system and also her too. This is so dangerous for patient safety. This hospital should also be held accountable. Thankfully, a nosy employee decided to check her nursing credential status, and when they pulled it up, they found an expired CNA license. She's getting hit with 7 counts of fraud and also 7 counts of, mistreating patients because she didn't have a license to do that in the first place. But I have to emphasize, this also wouldn't be an issue if that certain hospital wasn't so, negligent on maybe doing a little screening and maybe waiting for the credentials to drop before you hire somebody or promote somebody. Either way, I hope her practicing for the last 2-3 years didn't negatively affect any patients or their families. Let me know your thoughts in the comments about this.
You can die peacefully now. Marshmallow without mask. Chris Comstock. First Instagram photo. A black albino. Grown-up Teletubbies baby son. Ninja Turtle without mask. Vin Diesel with hair. McDonald's being built. Smurf without the hat. Rainbow's End.
Places that you can't visit. Brazil. Snake Island. India. North Sentinel Island. Indonesia. Mount Merapi. Ukraine. Chernobyl Exclusion Zone. Atlantic Ocean. The Bermuda Triangle. Japan. Aokigahara Forest. Tanzania. Lake Natron. Ethiopia. Danico Depression, Italy, Poveglia Island,